the legislative, we have House Chairwoman Representative Carla Renner, and we have Senate Chairman Senator Emanuel Jones. We heard you, Senator Jones. From our cities, we have Mayor John Ernst from Brookhaven, and Mayor Melanie Hammett, the president of EMA from Pine Lake.
John Ernst, I'm here.
From business, we have Ann Hanlon from the Perimeter CID.
Here, good morning.
Emery Morseberger, Metro South CID. Alan Goodman, Brookhaven Chamber. Ken Coleman, DeKalb Chamber.
I'm here. Good morning.
Dorian DeBar, DeKalb Development Authority. Lamar Smith from DFAX.
Good morning.
Jeannie Lee.
It's Jeannie Lynn, and I'm here.
I'm so sorry, Jeannie Lynn. Samia Abdullah.
Here, present.
And from Transportation, CEO Jeff Parker.
He's there.
Commissioner Jeff Rader, are you here as well?
I see Commissioner Rader.
Okay,
Yes,
my
Commissioner
apologies.
Rader.
I am.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll leave her.
Okay. Did we miss anyone who's present on the call? And we do have two new members of our task force. The first person is Mr. Jim Redovian.
Good morning. I thought you had missed me, but I'm here.
No, we can't miss you, Jim.
Yeah.
A former school board member and outstanding public servant from Dunwoody. And we also have joining us on the task force is former CEO Lee May. I don't know whether Reverend May has made it on the call yet, but we want to welcome these two gentlemen who've agreed to provide their experience and expertise in helping us to develop a strategy so that DeKalb County can keep our citizens safe. A brief update, since our last meeting, there have been four major developments in terms of our ongoing countywide response. Our public safety department has continued to lead the effort to distribute what will be some 10,000 COVID care kits in some of the census tracts that have been most impacted by the virus. Well, according to Dr. Ford and our Board of Health, we had the highest number of infections. We've been out on weekdays and primarily on Saturdays. It was an amazing, it just was an experience for me last Saturday as we passed out kits in the Candler Road area. The people who came and we passed out, I think, almost 3,000 kits in about 45 minutes. People were very appreciative of our ongoing efforts. And I know we'll be back out this Saturday, focused on other areas. We also kicked off information and education campaign. Rapper extraordinaire Michael Render and legendary gospel singer Dottie Peoples both agreed to go on local radio. And Mr. Render in particular has spoken eloquently and forcefully to younger African Americans. We've seen the videos and young people in general who thought it not unusual, at least didn't see the risks associated with congregating Gresham Park and other locations. And this particular marketing campaign has been a huge success. We're getting feedback from all quarters in Metro Atlanta, not just in DeKalb, but my communication department, the strategy has been picked up on MSNBC, Black Enterprise, and media throughout the nation because Mr. Render stepped out among that genre in terms of entertainers and taken a very affirmative stand. And the campaign, of course, stay home if you can, mask up if you can. And that has resonated with younger members of our county as well as across this nation. And that's been ongoing. We were delighted, and you'll hear a little bit more about this, to open up applications for our DeKalb County Virtual Academy. I know Ms. Austin Gibbons will be available to talk about that in more detail, but I can tell you this, by 8 o'clock this morning, the beginning of the workday, we had nearly 7,000 applicants from young people ages 14 to 24 in DeKalb County who are interested in being enrolled in our academy. So we're very thankful to the Board of Commissioners for supporting that effort. And also want to thank Senator Emmanuel Jones, who's on the call, who facilitated with a local car sanitizing company. Senator Jones, you can help me with the name. Is Car Clean?
It's Ride Clean is the name, Mr. CEO, and Ride Clean is a division of Cox Automotive.
So tell us a little bit about what they did for DeKalb County, and particularly for public safety, and that was directly because of efforts made by Senator Jones.
Ride Clean provided their product is a new product that they launched. A lot of information on the website about the product, Ride Clean, RIDEKLEEN. It's a new division of Cox Automotive. Their product kills 99% of all viruses, including the COVID virus. It lasts for well over 30 days, and they provided the product and the manpower for 2 weeks to clean and desanitize and decontaminate the public safety vehicles in DeKalb County. They had a station at the South Precinct, and they had a station at the North Precinct as well. And last time I checked, the first week they had already met their expectation over 140 units, and they were expecting to essentially get up to around 240 units altogether.
And thank you so much, Senator. And I know Director Lumpkin is on the call, and he shared with me how much he appreciated, and more importantly, how much our men and women in uniform appreciate having those cars desanitized. Director Lumpkin, any comment you want to make on an effort that we benefited from because of Senator Jones' leadership?
Director Lumpkin, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Certainly, we benefited from the outstanding partnership and leadership of our corporate partners and the leadership of the senator. We prioritize the vehicles that actually transport other individuals, and the men and women of the police department were highly, highly impressed.
And thank you so much, Senator, once again, and want to thank Ride Clean. They're a subsidiary of Cox Communications, Cox Corporation. They came to us on behalf of, with the Senator's leadership, and we really do appreciate that. The major issue, and we were able this week at our Board of Commissioners meeting, Presiding Officer Bradshaw and the Board of Commissioners, as you know, DeKalb County received approximately $125 million in funding through the CARES Act through our federal government. I was charged with the responsibility of developing a plan, and on this past week, Presiding Officer Bradshaw provided me with the opportunity to present a budgetary outline as to how DeKalb County is proposing to move forward and invest in those dollars in improving safety and overall and security in our county. And this is a budgetary outline. And one of the things, of course, we asked this task force to do, obviously any insight or thoughts you might have would be greatly appreciated. As I've said multiple times, there's no playbook for COVID-19. It's a novel virus, therefore it requires a novel emergency response. And that's what we're engaged in. This is phase one of our effort. We unfortunately believe, based on scientific evidence and advice, is that there will be a phase two. I'm concerned greatly that there might be a peak in the next 2 weeks. And so we are concerned about how we will go forward and being prepared to go forward in the event that there is a repeat occurrence, a peak, and or a phase two of this virus in the fall. And first of all, I want to thank Mr. Zach Williams, Diane McNabb, Catherine Horner and TJ Siegler, who worked together, and Ms. Dolores Crowell, who came together to create a process whereby we will assure to the citizens and the taxpayers of Georgia, and literally the American taxpayer, that the dollars that have been appropriated will be invested in a way that is, number one, transparent. There are several levels of accountability to ensure and to track every single penny that's invested in this particular process, so that our citizens will know what the money is and how it's being appropriated, or what it's being appropriated to, and more importantly, we will be constantly evaluating and taking account of the return on the investment that are being made. Now, Mr. Williams is here, and we won't go into that at this point in time, but we may come back to you. Mr. Williams, you want to talk a little bit in general about the management and oversight and administration of the CARES Act funded in DeKalb County?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. CEO. And what's important to note is that as we oversee and manage these funds that the American people, quite frankly, have invested the responsibility to us for $125 million, we have set up a separate account. I think all of the conversation needs to start with the fact that we are segregating these funds to ensure that there is no opportunity for mixing these funds with other general purpose government funds. We are going to be implementing a process much like we have with the special local option sales tax, the SPLOST program, wherein before funds can be spent, there's a discussion with the executive oversight committee, which includes myself, Dolores Crowell, and under your direction, so that we are ensured that we are initiating the programs that are consistent with the how they've been outlined in this budget. And then each step along the way, the program manager will be responsible for the initiation of procurement after it has approval. The finance department will then have staff who are responsible for checking that those things are happening, and we will be auditing on the back end, as you mentioned, to ensure that we got the return on the investment. So the segregation of the funds, the approval on the front end, and the checking on the back end are going to assure that each dollar is spent in accordance to the overall vision and serving the residents of DeKalb County.
Thank you, Mr. COO. And of course, one of the first things that we did following the development of processes and procedures to ensure accountability and transparency, we focused on what would be DeKalb County government's prime directive, what would be the mission that we would undertake in this very critical process and critical response that we engaged in. Where DeKalb County's government's mission is to develop, implement, and administer a comprehensive countywide COVID-19 emergency response strategy. And I'll emphasize the core develop, implement, but the key here is administer a comprehensive countywide, not in unincorporated DeKalb or not in incorporated DeKalb, but a countywide COVID-19 emergency response strategy. We are literally responsible for every soul that lives and works and visits in this county. That's 750,000 plus residents. The tip of the spear in the response to this health crisis, of course, is our Board of Public Health, which is led by an outstanding, not just medical practitioner, but an outstanding public servant who I rely on constantly, and who provides me with leadership and direction in terms of how we respond medically to this crisis. And so we began where we should, at what's most important. And more importantly, we took the advice from Dr. Elizabeth Ford. And you will see the first appropriation is $16.5 million in terms of health and wellness. Now, Dr. Ford, I know Presiding Officer Bradshaw has asked Dr. Ford to make a presentation to the Board of Commissioners next week. And I would like for her at this point, if it's okay, Mr. Presiding Officer, just to give an overview or outline of the budgetary proposals that have been placed on the table in response to her request, so that the task force will have a better idea of what we're proposing and, more importantly, what impacts it will have for our citizens. Fine. Dr. Ford.
Yes, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Mr. CEO, for your always embellished introduction. I appreciate it.
You earned it. You earned it, though. It wasn't embellished at all. It was very pragmatic.
So this proposal that the CEO has put forward is actually quite extraordinary. The level of support that he is providing to the county and specifically to the Board of Health is going to be transformational. The overarching theme of this support is equitable reentry, because the issues that brought about the COVID-19 pandemic in general, health disparities were a great contributor to some of the outcomes that we're seeing currently. And so to utilize this funding exclusively for testing would have been a disservice to the overall intent of, I believe, the intent of the funding. And so what we have tried to do, of course, in constant consultation with the DeKalb County government and the CEO, is to think about, okay, we have an urgent issue, but we also have a long-term issue, and we need to be thoughtful about ways moving forward that we can have a preemptive strike against what we already know is going to be another wave coming in the fall. And so while we will be addressing current issues such as the need for testing and contact tracing and some interventions, we're also looking at some long-term thoughts about how do we avoid some of the things that we saw currently as a result of this pandemic. And so this funding is probably the most comprehensive package you'll see in the state, directed to support public health specifically. So the first thing you'll see is the mobile testing sites. And that's critical because, as has been mentioned, there are some significant disparities, inequities in DeKalb as it relates to COVID predominance in specific zip codes. And so with the help of our district epidemiologist, we have identified those zip codes and mapped them out. And so we will have a targeted approach to testing. While I think pop-up sites are helpful, these one day, 800,000 people come, that's helpful in some ways, but I don't think that, some people are discouraged when they see a long line of cars, and so they may drive off and never be tested. And so what we were trying to do was establish testing sites in the community so that it was a more organized and thoughtful approach. And so you make an appointment, you don't get in today, you come tomorrow, but we're still there, we're there. And so it'll be a mobile testing unit located in different areas throughout the county. Faith-based communities have offered us their churches. Everyone's support has been extraordinary in this effort. And so we will launch, the plan is to launch the first 3 additional sites on Monday. Let me just remind folks that we already have 2 drive-through testing sites in DeKalb County, one located in the Boulder Crest area and one located in Dunwoody. But these sites will be specifically targeted to those zip codes that we know are high burden. But we will also reach out to communities that I'm expecting should have a high burden and may just not have access to testing. And so we'll be looking in the Hispanic Latino community as well. But we predominantly will be focused in South DeKalb, Stone Mountain. There's a site we have identified in Tucker. And so we'll hope to launch the first 3 of those sites on Monday. But the difference is that it's not just about testing. It's about providing additional resources for those folks that are tested so that they know where additional opportunities for them to receive services. And so the county has put together an extraordinary resource guide that will be provided as well as the CEO's hand sanitizer and mask initiative will be part of it as well. And so we're very excited about that and the opportunity to be more nimble as we address COVID-19 in this county. So then we have the 6 top zip codes, but we asked for 10 units because we also have a tremendous issue in the county with long-term care facilities. And we want to be able to, when a case, not an outbreak, but a case is identified, we can immediately deploy staff to that center and test both staff and residents so that we can manage these outbreaks. Most of the numbers of cases that you see in DeKalb County are really coming from these long-term care facilities, a significant proportion. And they are certainly a significant proportion of our deaths. And so the more rapid that we can address their issues, the safer the community will be. To that end, I also want to point out that despite the fact that DeKalb tends to be number 1, number 2, number 3 in the state for COVID-19 cases, we are down maybe 6 and 7 as it relates to deaths. So we're doing something right in terms of the speed with which we are addressing this issue. And that's something that I'm very proud of. Moving on, My Insight Telehealth. This is our patient care management system that will allow us to collect data. I mean, knowledge is power these days, and we have to be able to get information in a timely fashion so that we know where to direct our resources. So the Insight program will provide the data collection, but also one of the gaps that was identified as it related to COVID when it first came out is the lack of access to healthcare. If you recall, back in March when our first 2 cases came, the number of tests that we had available statewide was so limited that individuals had to have a referral to even be tested. And so that eliminated a significant proportion of the population who may not have had insurance or access to a primary care physician. So Board of Health setting up a robust telehealth network will allow some of those folks to be evaluated in a way that doesn't require them to have to come to a doctor's office, and will help us to manage them even as we continue to try to manage this wave. Thirdly, there need to be upgrades to our facilities to allow us to isolate individuals that present to the health department symptomatic. Right now, we just sort of put them to the side, which is not, the safest thing to do. And so we will be doing some structural upgrades to our facilities to allow for isolation rooms to separate. And this will help us with other infectious diseases as well. As you all know, we're also one of the top counties in the state for tuberculosis. And so having specific space that we can separate potentially infectious individuals from the rest of the clinical population is a huge, again, another preventive measure. Moving on, we have the housing. This was a big issue as we tried to manage this pandemic, is what do you do with individuals who test positive but live in homes with vulnerable family members? And so I thought that having a structure in place where we could provide quarantine or isolation housing to individuals to protect them from the rest of their family and vice versa would be a significant preventive measure as well. The reason that particular initiative came about primarily is our first responders, because, we didn't want to have them test positive and then expose their family members to this deadly virus. And so this quarantine and isolation housing will be set up to support not only first responders, but other citizens who may be lacking in housing options, short term, of course, but certainly to manage the time while being quarantined or isolated. It will also support homeless individuals who may need this similar service. There are other agencies in place that provide that service, but we will just also be able to support them if those other agencies run out of options. Our mobile wellness clinic and mobile farmers market. We've had a mobile farmers market for some time now. This initiative has been award-winning. It actually is featured at the CDC in the CDC Museum at one point. The mobile farmers market provides locally grown produce to DeKalb County citizens. It has a scheduled visitation site throughout the county. Is always in extremely high demand. And for some years now, my wish has been to have more of those because of the demand for the services. And so this opportunity has allowed us to acquire 6 additional mobile farmers market units. But not only will they be providing produce, which again, nutrition is a significant contributor to poor outcomes in this county, another preventive measure. But not only will this provide nutrition, it will also provide a clinic. And so that's an important process to make sure that folks, access is everything as we try to address this pandemic, but this pandemic is a symptom of a larger systematic problem. And so we can't just talk about testing and think we're going to work our way out of this. And so these are just some of the initiatives. We'll also be working on a program to support residents with chronic diseases, because as we know, that was also another one of the risk factors that contributed to negative outcomes as it relates to COVID. And so I don't want to provide too much. I'm working on our presentation for the Board of Commissioners, so I don't want to steal too much of next week's thunder, but I wanted to at least provide you with a general overview of the plans that we have for this funding. And again, I'm just, after 15 years, it takes a lot to kind of just overwhelm me, but this was extraordinary. And I'm so grateful to the CEO's support and faith in the health department and our ability to carry out these initiatives and to support this community in a immediate way, but also in a long-term way, which is much more important and more transformational. This funding can really change the way this county addresses not only a pandemic, but chronic illness and health inequities in general. So I will hush at this point and open up the floor for questions.
Thank you, Director. And of course, the commissioners expressed their strong support for our recommendation that you just addressed. So there are questions or comments or suggestions that we might provide to Dr. Ford and to the governing authority that might help us in this regard. I know Dr. Ross and Dr. O'Carroll, you're on the phone. I would really appreciate your thoughts in this regard.
Dave, you want to go first? Got to unmute.
Dave Ross.
Well, I'll start then. I just want to really congratulate Dr. Ford on her vision. It is always hard in the midst of a crisis to think long-term, but you've got to do both. And it's a terrific example of realizing that as much as we have to deal with the crisis in front of us this week and next week, and maybe into the fall and next year, it is also true that there are continuing health needs, and anything we can do to build infrastructure that supports those long-term needs while we're also addressing short-term needs is just a brilliant dual use of limited funds. So just kudos to Dr. Ford for that approach.
Thanks to the CEO for supporting him, but thank you.
Dr. Ross.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I messed up something on my computer, so I can't see you. I just wanted to say to Dr. Ford, I really appreciate the extra attention you're giving to the mobile clinics to address the inequity issues that we know exist across the county. This is really important, and I think the mobile farmers market clinic also is fabulous. So I, applaud the work you're doing, and I think you're really collectively the county's making progress, as you've noted, by the relatively lower death rate on a per capita population basis. So I think, Mr. CEO, collectively your efforts here to mobilize the entire county are having an impact. So we thank you.
May I ask a question of Dr. Ford? I think one of the great challenges must be to manage the messaging consistently when people are hearing on CNN and different networks very different messages about where we are in the pandemic and how cautious we still need to be or don't need to be. How are you trying to address that so people hear a consistent message from county leaders such as yourself?
That is a challenge because I'm not really sure there is a consistent message. Different communities have different risks. And so what our messaging in Dekap has really been, first of all, the facilities are opening up, restrictions have been loosened. And so at some point it has to be individual choice, whether or not you choose, what level of protection you choose to provide for you and your family. And so what our messaging has been is that, whether or not restrictions have been lifted, we still have a pandemic. And so there is a certain level of protection that is available to you. And that's why I appreciate the CEO distributing the hand sanitizer and the mask, because that's simple. That's low level protection, but it's also very powerful. And we have a community that sometimes is suspicious of vaccinations and things along that line. And so even once we have a vaccination developed, there's no guarantee that the most needy populations will even access it. And so everyone will use a mask though. And so I think we've just been trying to say, okay, we know you can go out and that's your choice, whether you choose to go out or not, but here's some concrete ways that you can continue to protect yourself if you choose to do so. And that's really been the message.
This is Mayor Ernst. I do have a question. How you doing?
Thanks for the name finally.
Yes, exactly. Virus tracer, hiring more people to trace the outbreak so that we can immediately, get people into quarantine to stop the spread of, especially either now or the second wave. That we all expect to come. I didn't see anything in your budget for that. And the governor has said that they want to do some more, but everything that I see seems to be that amount is too anemic to move the needle. So was there thought, or is there thought about hiring extra virus tracers to find where the virus is at and get people into quarantine and tested as quick as possible?
Sure, thank you. And that's a great question. So here's the challenge. The testing that we currently have available in the state does not, at this point, provide a timely enough result to really be robust with contact tracing. I'm not saying that contact tracing is not necessary, but we need a test that gets us results quicker than what we have right now. We're still exploring some other options. So it's not that, we have nothing available. But right now, depending on which test you use, you can get a result anywhere between 48 hours and 9 days. And so contact tracing, it has to be a more immediate response. In terms of funding, the state it has already begun to deploy contact tracers to the various counties, and they have a plan to distribute. It's a formula based on recommendations from not only other states, but the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It is 7 contact tracers per 100,000 population. And so we should be getting about 53 contact tracers. That's who is assigned through the state. But I have also had personal contacts and have my staff about individuals in the county who simply want to volunteer. And so Emery has been extraordinary in reaching out to us to provide additional support for the other, because it's not, contact tracing is a very complicated process. It's not just the phone call, it's the extra work that has to, so there's a contact investigator and a contact tracer, a resource coordinator. And so we'll be looking for our additional support throughout the county to supplement what is also provided by the state.
My mother-in-law was a contact tracer for infectious disease up in her hometown. So it's I understand myself that it's not just a phone call, and it's very, very complicated, and a lot of CSI work too. So it's kind of.
And I have a question also, if possible, CEO Thurman.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Cochran-Johnson.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to you as well as the team, and to you, Dr. Ford. My question really focused around the mobile test sites that are rolling out. Can you explain a little bit in terms of are these sites equipped to assist multiple individuals? How are they structured on the inside? And the second question that I have, I believe Fresh on Deck is currently handled by the Cooperative Extension in terms of the fresh fruits and vegetables. Who are we partnering with on that particular program as you roll out those 6 buses?
Great. So I'll answer your second question first. Fresh on Deck, yes, we will definitely be looking to DeKalb Cooperative Extension. They've been a great partner throughout this process. So I would be delighted to continue to support this, because when we first, and I'm glad that Lee May is on the phone because he launched the first one. And so that was our wish all along, was to have more of these. And so I'm sure that they'll be delighted to partner with us on that initiative. In terms of the mobile test sites, the mobile unit is really just to transport staff. The test sites will be set up, we'll have tents, because we still want to have both, because you can't have them come into a unit, because then you have an infectious disease spread. So what we will do is have both a drive-up option, as we are currently doing at our current sites, but we will also have a walk-in option, because one of the things we have addressed is the lack of transportation. And so what do you do if you don't want to walk into a mobile site? And so we'll have both a walk-up setup and a drive-through setup with tents that we can dismantle at the end of every day. Then you come back the next day. Right now, our planned hours of operation are from 10 to 3, but that will be evaluated. We'll be collecting data on patient flow and deciding, maybe we need to do this site 3 days a week. Maybe we need to extend the hours on this side of town instead. And so we'll be constantly evaluating flow. But the thing is that they will be permanent sites where people can come every day to get tested, not just on a day when we have a pop-up. So we're hoping that that will increase the access to testing and also provide us with an ability to give them some other resources as well. Because as I said, this isn't all just about testing.
Understood. And thank you so much, because I was concerned as to the capacity if the testing was taking place in the unit because of the need for separation. So
No, we'll have scheduled, visits, and they'll come through, and then of course there'll be walk-ins as always, but we've got that planned for as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ford. And of course, once again, I'm not using hyperbole, but you are an outstanding leader for us, and I appreciate you very much. The next item, mental health, is still to be determined if they are members of the task force who can help us. I know Dr. Ford will be reaching out this afternoon. We're still seeking to develop a closer relationship and partnership, I guess, with our community service board and mental health resources. That's ongoing, and hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to return with a more specific strategy that's in place. I mentioned our media and marketing campaign that's being led by Michael Render and Ms. Dottie Peoples. We are also, right now, by next week, I hope we will have an effort ongoing on Spanish language radio. We're talking as well as print and broadcast media that serves our Hispanic and Latino community. I'm extremely concerned about the growing crisis in Hall County, particularly among the Hispanic and Latino population. Hall County is the new hotspot. And of course, it's just 30, 40 minutes away from DeKalb County. And we know for a fact that many DeKalb County residents and citizens actually work in Hall County. And so we'll take affirmative action, number one, to provide information and education. We distributed 500 COVID care kits. Telemundo conducted a food distribution activity, I guess it was last week, and they reached out to us, and there were over 800 families there. Chief Ramos represented us there. As you know, she's fluent. She speaks fluent Spanish. And of course, we distributed kits, and we're going to continue to work closely with our Hispanic and Latino populations, as well as Asian American and others. DeKalb, and I know Ms. Tyson can attest to this. When I was there with her, she told me that we spoke 160 different languages. in the DeKalb County School District. And so we have to have a multifaceted, multilingual strategy. Public safety, we are appropriating with the support of the Board of Commissioners, $25 million to support our men and women in not just police and fire, but also watershed, sanitation, and other areas that have continued, quite frankly, to work, while the majority of our employees have either been working remotely or serving in an auxiliary capacity. We've had several hundred frontline workers who continue to really shoulder the day-to-day burden of providing essential services to DeKalb County. We're very proud of that in terms of our support of them. And we appropriated, requested through the commissioners to appropriate $17 million in that regard. That will include PPE, equipment for all frontline men and women. If we're going to put people potentially in harm's way, then we have to do everything we can to protect them as well as their families when you're dealing with a highly contagious germ. Oftentimes, if you expose yourself, you're also exposing your family. I know we talked a lot about strategic stockpile. One of the reasons we're able, Dr. Ford, to distribute the 10,000 face masks and sanitizer is Mr. Williams and our DEMA director, Chief Scott, early on in early February, began to order PPE and stockpile it here in DeKalb County. That was before I issued an executive order, before the governor issued an executive order, and before the president issued an executive order. And I just want to note once again the work that Director Lumpkin and Chief Scott and Mr. Williams did in envisioning and working together and alerting me that we needed to make these investments and we needed to do it in an expedited manner. Director Lumpkin, is there any comments regarding the strategic stockpile that you want to share with us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. CEO. What the concept is to be able to support DeKalb County 3 months out if we have supply chain interruptions. We have started that mindset, and it's not just for the public safety, it's for all DeKalb County employees. And as you have done, Mr. CEO, to bring in our population. But those co-workers, we in DeKalb County are a team. The police, the fire, et cetera, unless, and watershed, et cetera, unless their support auxiliary people function, then we cannot function. So we've got to support those individuals who are general workers that we normally think of that keep the services for DeKalb residents going. Therefore, we will have certain opportunities when we bring them back to either to work or they work remotely. We have to support them and keep them safe and well. We'll be able to get that done. We have more capacity than most think nationally, and we'll be there with this allocation that you have spoken of.
All right, thank you, sir. And one thing that we will seek professional advice on retrofitting. That will be going, people say, oh, we want to get back to normal. I don't think there will be a return to what we view as normal. We'll be looking very closely at retrofitting all of our public-facing offices in terms of us hopefully getting back to work at some point in time when it's safe for employees. But the offices we come back to will be very different than the ones that we exited from. Food insecurity is a major issue. Commissioner Larry Johnson, I know he's on the call, but this has been one of his top priorities that he's continued to advocate for and on behalf. And we're very close to negotiating an agreement first with the Atlanta Food Bank and also with the Georgia Growers Association. I'll be making an announcement hopefully on next Tuesday to the Board of Commissioners, firming up what we'll be doing in those two areas. I had a great call really with our DFACS director, who's on the call, Mr. Smith. It was on Sunday morning, and he was working. He was up working, and he's doing a great job, really providing support from our most vulnerable families. And we are recommending, and we are hopefully appropriating $275,000 to the Department of Family and Children's Services. And this support will, the General Assistance Program from my old DFAC days, the program is not a high profile, but in the day-to-day operations, the General Assistance Program is extremely important in helping impoverished families and their children. So, Mr. Smith, you want to speak a little bit about that and give us some idea about what you're seeing at the Department of Family and Children's Services as a result and fueled by the economic and health crisis that we're wrestling with right now.
Certainly. Good morning, Mr. CEO, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the task force again. And good morning, everyone. And I appreciate your leadership and congratulations on this outstanding grant. The citizens of DeKalb County are certainly better for having you at the helm during this time of a global pandemic. We are fortunate and hopefully we'll receive the funding. General assistance for our families and citizens in DeKalb County really help and stand in for gaps around utilities when they have been disconnected and rent. With these additional funds, we are looking to do a couple of things. One, increase the frequency that families can apply for the benefit, and increase the amount that can be awarded to families. So I won't bog you all down with the details, but for example, regarding utilities or rent, a family can only apply once a year. So with these services, we're looking to increase the frequency perhaps to every 120 days for utilities and perhaps every 6 months for rent. And in addition to rent, also looking to support mortgages as well, or help if they are delinquent or past due in a mortgage. And this isn't simply for folks who they may think just don't have the capacity or don't want to work. Families have to show the capacity to sustain beyond the assistance. So this is certainly a program that helps stand into the gap for families. On our OFI, Office of Family Independence, that's the programming where we support TANF, SNAP, which is food stamps or Medicaid. We certainly have seen a substantial increase during the pandemic, probably a 30% increase in applications related to that. We continue to accept applications via website, email, and fax. Our lobbies at the DFACS office are closed, but we certainly are accessible to our communities and families. And work that hasn't stopped is also ensuring that our children and young people and families are safe. So we have Child Protective Services case managers who continue to respond to cause of neglect or maltreatment, in addition to our foster care workers who ensure that families can remain connected so that we can work toward reunification whenever possible. So also in assistance related to PPE is most critical for our staff as well. So just really looking forward to getting the services and the funding to the families who really are the lifeblood in our community. So just grateful to you, Mr. CEO, grateful to the guidance and counsel from Dr. Ford related to what we can do and how we should navigate in our communities and to the task force at large. So thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Can you give us a little insight into as what you're seeing? Because we know that domestic violence and abuse is up. What are you seeing as it relates to child neglect and abuse in DeKalb County?
So our numbers have gone down. As you can imagine, our largest reporting source or mandated reporting source are schools. And so we know that that's happened virtually. And we're working with my CPS program director is working with Denise Revels, who is lead social worker for DeKalb County Schools. And I think Madam Interim Superintendent probably can talk more about this as well. They've recently launched, and I don't want to misspeak, but an app, or it allows the opportunities for students to identify or indicate perhaps if they've been exposed to abuse or maltreatment in their home. So I believe that they began to test that. So certainly our numbers are down, but we are prepared as we go into the summer months and we hear that summer programs are opening up, that we will begin to actually see an uptick in reports during the summer as opposed to a decrease, which is what the usual trend is when school is out. So our staff is at the ready, and we are certainly prepared for ensuring that young people and children are safe in their homes and in their communities.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Thank you. Dr. Tyson? No, and one thing, and I usually don't correct, she's not interim. She is the superintendent.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, I'm getting ready to make a speech, so that's all right. I'm getting ready to make a speech. I just used that as a segue, Mr. Director. And if, from somebody who served in the position, if our school board had any sense whatsoever, they convinced Ms. Tyson, the superintendent, to stay in the position she's currently holds. She's done an outstanding job under the most difficult of circumstances. She knows DeKalb County schools going and coming. She knows in and everything you need to know. And that's just my commercial, Madam Superintendent.
I second that motion, Mr. CEO.
I have further motions from the cities.
Been moved, seconded. All those in favor?
I believe we could probably find funding in the CARES Act, possibly for COVID-related, that we could give to Ms. Tyson to keep her around.
So, whatever it takes.
Jim Redolia knows a little bit. So may I take this as unanimous consent that we should write a letter on behalf of the task force?
Yes.
Yes.
Please.
Mr.
Absolutely.
Tyson, thank you. This is Representative Drenner. I can't thank you enough for stepping up.
Absolutely.
And taking on this challenge. Our children of the county appreciate it greatly.
Ms. Tyson, you are not muted, but we're also not hearing you.
He's probably speechless. Try now.
All right. Okay, can you hear me now? I know, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, thank you all very, very much. I certainly appreciate all the commendations and kind statements. And I wanted to piggyback on Mr. Smith's comments about our students. Yes, we absolutely are executing and implementing what we call DCSD Cares About You for our children. And during the district closure, we have had our social workers calling directly into the homes, following up on all cases, keeping a direct connection to all children that have been in vulnerable positions, and so that they know they have someone that they can come to at any point, any time of the day, 24/7. And we will continue those services through the summer. We have announced our summer learning opportunities for the summertime, and they will all be virtual during June. And then we're going to make an attempt to try to do some things face-to-face in July, just not sure yet. But again, our social work team and our mental health wraparound services team has been working with our students direct, and we will continue to do so through the summer. And thank you for the partnership, Mr. Smith. We can't do it without you. Every time we call, we need help, we need assistance. You all are right there with us, and we do appreciate that partnership.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Sometimes I've seen it in politics and life. Sometimes you just need to do the obvious thing and make the obvious decision. But somehow, some way, we struggle with that. Thank you, Madam Superintendent. You are the obvious choice. Speaking of the DeKalb County School District, of course, we launched the DeKalb Virtual Career Academy. And that is a partnership between, and first of all, we initially funded this back in 2017 as the DeKalb Works Summer Employment Program. Commissioner Bradshaw, each member of our Board of Commissioners enthusiastically supported this effort where we invested local dollars along with federal dollars to create employment opportunities for young people in DeKalb County. Since 2017, we've had over 1,100 young men and women to participate, to earn much needed summer income, but also to gain access to career development, life skills, and academic enrichment. Current economic environment will not allow us to place our young citizens in jobs this summer. And so by developing a partnership with Ms. Tyson and the DeKalb County School District, as well as President Holston at the Piedmont Technical College, we were able to give birth to transform our summer employment program into the DeKalb Virtual Career Academy. And I want to also thank again Presiding Officer Bradshaw, who invested $60,000 additional dollars. And we originally intended this summer to have 400 slots in our summer employment program. But by transforming it to a virtual platform, we're now able to extend it to enroll up to 850 DeKalb's young residents between the ages of 14 and 24. It's phenomenal, and we could not have done it without Ms. Tyson and her staff, as well as Mr. Holston. What the technical college will provide is GED education and training for out-of-school youth. About 150 of the young people will be young men and women who actually left school, who dropped out of school, who will be able to participate and seek GED educational opportunities and hopefully graduate with a diploma. And I'll let Ms. Tyson talk a little bit more about the curriculum, but I'd want to just celebrate the partnership. It's unprecedented. We're getting inquiries literally now from all over the country. Now, the good news is we were able to expand it to 850. And I know Ms. Austin Gibbons is also on the line. So, Ms. Austin Gibbons, first of all, kind of bring us up to date on where we are in terms of applications and where we are in the process. And, in terms of the counseling we'll provide, then Ms. Tyson can talk a little bit more about the curriculum that will be available to our students.
All right. Thank you, Mr. CEO. And also thank you to this team for your leadership and guidance through the pandemic. Currently, as it stands, about 10 minutes ago, we are currently at 6,790 registrations. We broke the numbers from last year. On our first day, we had over 2,500 applications with our DeKalb Works program last year. This year, we broke that 2,500 on our first day within the first 5 hours. So we are well on our way. Our next step in the process is the registrations will actually close today. Once the registration closes, we will commence to doing a random selection through a lottery system of those individuals, the 850 that are going to be selected. And welcome letters will go out to those selected candidates no later than Monday. So we're going to start emailing those letters out this weekend. So we will be working. Also have to thank Superintendent Tyson and her team for their efforts, because this has been a daily, and when I say Monday through Sunday calls, the teams are working very hard to ensure that we execute this virtual academy and make sure it is something good for our students. With this academy, we are going to focus on kind of a three-prong approach. Our academic enrichment, which would encompass virtual learning, and I'll let Superintendent Tyson discuss that, but it's through their Verge learning platform system based on some industry-specific credentialing training as well for individuals that can go through business design as well as web design and game design from our career technical education instructors at the school system. As well as CEO talked about GTPC, and Dr. Holston and his team, Dr. McBride, will also be giving the students courses who need their GED for some online GED courses. The second approach is going to be our life skills enrichment, which will include financial literacy, business ethics, culture, and generations in a workplace. And also in the morning before individuals really get starting and they're learning like all of us do, we need a little inspiration and motivation. So our goal is to have motivational vitamins every morning to get the kids started out to a good start, to let them know that we are here to support them, not only as just WorkSource DeKalb, but as DeKalb County as an entirety, that they've got a full gamut of individuals supporting them to get them through this process. Our last piece would be our career development piece. Individuals will have the opportunity to do vision boards, career planning. We'll talk about high demand occupations. That's going to be, they'll need skills for moving forward into the next, I'll say the next new normal, as well as some interviewing skills and entrepreneurship. So I think the transformation from DeKalb Works to the virtual academy is truly enlightening. It's also been a lot of good work that's happening and innovation. And that's one thing with WorkSource DeKalb. Part of our WIOA funding, the federal funding we talk about, it's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. So what we're doing is we are being innovative, and we are providing opportunities for those youth, sir.
Superintendent Tyson.
Yes, sir. What I would like to add, and Ms. Gibbons, thank you for all of the work your team has done. Ms. Gibbons will text me, and I know when I get a text from her, I got to jump right on it. So I thank you for your work in this effort. But the school district will be using its software platform called Berger. This is the same platform that we've used with the digital learning second semester as we have been working through the instructional school year. And we have teachers that have been working to prepare the platform for this summer program. They are certified classroom teachers that will be providing enrichment, remediation, and recovery opportunities for those students that need help in the core areas of their subject courses. And what we want to share with you, our high school scholars, 9 through 12, and any 8th grader that will be taking high school courses have the opportunity to receive 2 Carnegie unit credits towards graduation. And so what's important about that is real-time work towards real-time goals. And so as they are working through these courses, this will allow them an opportunity for those that may have slipped along the pathway towards graduation to get caught up, and for those that want to get ahead and have that extra rigor on their curriculum towards their opportunity for higher ed education, which we know a lot of colleges are looking for. It will assist them as well. And in all things, particularly for our high school students, when they can take extra courses that help towards their GPA, it even strengthens them for the opportunity for the Hope Scholarship if they attend school in Georgia. So we're excited about this partnership. We're throwing all of our resources that we have available towards it, and that includes Chromebooks for DeKalb students. I got a team working now that are getting the laptops ready, getting the hotspots ready, so that we can do distribution as soon as Ms. Gibbons tells us the number of students and the names of students. We're ready.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Gibbons? And once again, I want to thank the Board of Commissioners. When in 2017, this is a unique approach. We're the only county that I'm aware of in Georgia, really, that's investing the amount of money we have invested in creating employment opportunities for our young people. And the Board of Commissioners have been just unanimous in their ongoing support. And Madam Superintendent, we'll be calling you because I can hear what commissioners are thinking. If we got 850 positions and 7,000 applicants, you know where this is going. And I'll have to answer to them on Tuesday, so be ready.
Yes, we look forward to the opportunity to try to raise the numbers if we can.
All right, thank you. Next, the Small Business Loan Program. Presiding Officer Bradshaw is leading our Small Business Task Force, and this plays in critically to what his committee and what he's been thinking, and as they begin to flesh this out. And I'd like for the presiding officer, if he will, to kind of give us an oversight. I know you've had some meetings with your task force. So can you brief us, Mr. Presiding Officer, on where we are and what the thinking is going forward as it relates to business support and development?
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and good morning, everyone. I will try to be brief, but I want to thank CEO Thurman for affording us the opportunity to serve in this capacity. I want to thank my original band members, your original appointees to this task force, Kenny Coleman from the DeKalb Chamber and Emery Berger from the Tucker Summit and South Metro CIDs. Both of these gentlemen have been absolutely excellent to work with. And if time permits, when I'm finished with my remarks, I'd certainly like to afford them the opportunity to weigh in. So we originally approached this mission with three primary objectives. Objective number one was to get clarity on what our mandate is. So we met with you, Mr. CEO, on April 29th, and you provided us with that clarity. And simply stated, you asked us to focus on how we can be of the most assistance to our business owners and our employers in DeKalb County, the people who employ people, and try to help those businesses reopen and remain open in the best environment possible. So we thank you for that clarity. Objective number two was to begin the process of building out this subcommittee. And we have been able to add some depth to our subcommittee, of whom some are already members of this task force. And the new members that we've added over the course of the last couple of weeks have been John Ernst, who's the mayor of Brookhaven, Ann Hanlon, who's president of the Perimeter CID, Betty Willis, who's Vice President of Government and Community Affairs at Emery University, John Kim, who is a professor in the Guzweta Business School at Emery University, and Bob Wilson, who's our former district attorney and the former chief executive officer of DeKalb Medical. And they're all doing a tremendous job in adding great value to the work that we're engaged in. I also would be remiss at this point if I didn't pause to thank my chief of staff, Alicia Brooks, who's been supporting our group as our meeting organizer, as our note taker, and basically keeping us on track as she keeps me on track as I discharge the duties as commissioner. And then objective number three was to establish a methodology for gathering info. So to that end, we have decided to conduct a series of what we call industry sector meetings to glean the thoughts and recommendations from some of the folks who are doing business day to day in DeKalb County and adapting day to day to this new environment. And the industry sectors that we've identified so far, one, the hotel industry, also the restaurant industry, also manufacturing, and then a group of large employers to include AT&T, the Southern Company, and Kroger. And I can tell you that these meetings have been very insightful as these business leaders have shared, the impact of this virus on them and the steps they're taking to just keep things on track. And I think the folks who've been engaged appreciate that we're doing this and being asked for their opinions. Now, at this point, I don't want to get out over my skis regarding some specific recommendations. Those are yet to come. But there are some themes that are emerging out of the conversations that we're having in terms of what might be of assistance to them. One of the themes that's come through is that there needs to be clear and consistent messaging from our county leadership. Somebody alluded to earlier that there are all sorts of information out there from various sources, but the message from DeKalb County needs to be clear and consistent. Secondly, there needs to be need for an education process, educating our citizens, and a marketing campaign. And I noticed, sir, in your budget, your proposal, there is some money set aside for a marketing campaign. That desires to highlight local businesses, to underscore local businesses, and to say, hey, DeKalb County is open for business, and put some real money behind marketing that. Another theme that came up is easier access to PPE. Some of our businesses, have been having some trouble accessing PPE. Another issue that's come up is legal assistance in deciphering some of the government info. I know people have applied for some of the PPP from the federal government, and a lot of these are small businesses. They don't have an army of lawyers at hand, and they're having the dickens of a time just trying to figure out which way is up to even have access to some of the assistance that's out there. So legal assistance. Another thing that came up is potential relief for property taxes, or at a minimum, as those tax bills come due in the fall, laying out some sort of payment plan. Nobody wants to skip out on paying their property taxes, but they're looking ahead and saying, we may need some time to do that. Will there be any accommodation made to make that happen? And of course, what always comes through is access to capital, access to money and access to capital. So in terms of next steps, our subcommittee is scheduled to meet again on this coming Monday, the 18th. We're going to aggregate the information that we've received so far. We're going to decide if we need to schedule more industry sector meetings of those type. And we want to decide what other data sources, what other inputs we need to bring into our deliberation as we get to the place where we make some specific recommendations. There's one thing that we'll suggest at this point, and I distill it to the word synchronization. And what I mean when I say that is that there are other entities out there engaged in a similar exercise, and we need to be working in concert with them. For example, I know that Dekap has got a business survey in the field. I think that's supposed to come to closure sometime in the next few days. I know they're also contemplating a small business loan program of some sort. We've got our community development department that's engaged in those kinds of activities. Whatever the state government, whatever the federal government is doing, we need to be working in concert with all those entities so we're not working at cross purposes. So at this point, if there are colleagues on our subcommittee on the call, I'd like to afford them, Mr. CEO, if that's all right, a chance to weigh in as well. First, I'll turn to Kenny Coleman from the chamber, who's done an outstanding job in sort of being our moderator for these industry sector meetings. Kenny, are you out there? I'm not sure he's still on board. Okay. I don't know if Emery Morseberger is on board.
I am.
Okay, Emery, please, if you have anything to add that I may have missed or some of your own thoughts.
Commissioner, you covered the bases really well. One thing I was really surprised at was the resilience of our manufacturers and our logistics operations. We've got a lot of companies that are not shut down, but they're running full production right now. They're doing everything they can do to keep their employees safe, but they've continued working and they're doing the job all over DeKalb County. And it's kind of an honor to have talked to them. And I'm excited about getting the word out about the fact that DeKalb is actually working and producing right as we're speaking. They're going strong, and we want to do everything we can to help them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Emery. I don't know if Ann Hanlon's still on board. If you want to say anything.
Ann? Get Ann Hanlon. Ann Hanlon, yes, Ann.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Commissioner Bradshaw. Just to echo what Emery said, can you hear me? I'll echo Emery's points that I think we've got a lot of businesses in all parts of DeKalb that are still going strong. We also talked a little bit about transit and the availability of transit to make sure that as the manufacturing facilities open and retail, restaurant, hotels, that those folks are able to get to their jobs. Making sure that's part of our getting business back online.
All right, thanks, Ann. And I don't know if Mayor Ernst is still on board. All right.
I'm here.
Okay. Is there anything you wanted to add, sir?
No, again, great presentation. What's going on? I've been watching the videos. Look forward to seeing you guys on Monday.
All right, excellent. So the bottom line is for business activity to be robust again, people need to feel safe again. And that's what it's going to distill to. And one of the other themes that came through is that, businesses are going to make these decisions in real time. They're going to open at their own pace, and we need to support it. We need to be supportive of the choices that they make as they assess what they need to do to survive. So with that, Mr. CEO, I'll thank you again for affording us this opportunity to be of service, and I will kick it back to you, sir.
I'm sorry, this is Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, and I do have a question about the committee.
Sure.
Yes, when was it formed? And secondly, is it possible, because I've done a lot of work in this area and I would love to be aware of when those meetings are taking place, not to derail any efforts that have taken place, but I was totally unaware of the committee formation because this has been something in terms of economic and small business development that worked on tremendously since coming into office.
Yes, so we are open to receiving all data points. Our next meeting is on Monday, so at 1 o'clock. So if you want to invite to that Zoom, your input will be totally welcome and appreciated.
Thank you.
Mr. CEO, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. And I do want to mention one thing to Mayor Tucker, Frank Allman, and one of the things they are doing is passing out masks, PPE, to business owners in the Tucker area. And I just thought that was an innovative and very supportive approach. I think the presiding officer mentioned that there are businesses who are struggling to get access. It's one thing to tell people to wear the mask, but then we don't think that, well, where would you purchase or get access to it? So I wanted to note that as an innovative, granular approach to addressing this crisis. The last thing, and presiding officer mentioned it, the commissioners unanimously, I think, at least I heard, their support for a Dekap small business loan program. And to that extent, $10 million have been set aside. We're working on fleshing out the details, and we'll have an update on that to the commissioners on next Tuesday. But there is a strong commitment from every commissioner and from the CEO's office to move expeditiously to get that put in place for our business owners who are struggling right now. And finally, senior assistants, we've already served 29,000 meals. We'll continue to do whatever is necessary to support our seniors who are suffering from food insecurity. The governor made his latest executive order allowed some camps to reopen. I've not had a chance to talk to our PARS director, Chuck Ellis, about how that impacts our strategies right now. But currently, as of last week, we were focused on providing summer camp opportunities, virtual camps to some 1,000 students. I mentioned retrofitting public buildings, and one building that's central to the operation in DeKalb County, and literally the county seat, is our courthouse. And I want our chief judge to update us. I know there have been several meetings about the thinking as to how we might reopen the most important building in our county, which is our county courthouse.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, and hello to everybody again. We have been working diligently in the court system. We are not closed. I feel like I've had to say that on a number of occasions, and I will continue to shout it from the rooftops because we want everybody to know that we are in the business of providing services to our citizens. Though I preside over our Superior Court, I have convened a task force to deal with some of the reopening issues, and our COO, Zach Williams, has graciously joined us for our task force meetings to address some of the concerns with how best to service the public as we phase back to some semblance of normal. So with that being said, our Supreme Court Justice has issued a second judicial emergency order. The judicial emergency will extend through and including June 12th. So effectively, the first time that we should be doing
business, and the earliest that we could do business with the courthouse crowd from the public would be that Monday, June 15th. Notwithstanding that, that order does allow the local chief judges in the counties to put additional provisions in place to protect the employees and the public. And I have adopted the chief judge's order, as well as I put some provisions in place that will require individuals to wear a mask or face covering before they come into the courthouse. We are, of course, continuing to provide a virtual environment for most of our hearings in all of the classes of court, so that individuals who are in some of the vulnerable groups do not have to physically come to the courthouse to have their matters heard. So obviously a huge priority for us in the consideration of how best to provide protection would be in the technology space. We realize that we have had to ramp up some of our technology, and we have some additional technology needs. Most of the judges are operating using Zoom or WebEx, and so we will continue to do that. But we understand that, you know, for some of our self-represented litigants and others, they may not have access to technology, which means we have to be available to having some in-person hearings to service the needs of those individuals. And so we are working through now how best to allow people to enter our building safely. We have some masks that have been provided. And thank you to COO Williams for indulging that request to get us those masks. Because as of tomorrow, for example, when the new emergency order goes into effect, we have to accept individuals who are seeking gun licenses. We've always had to accept individuals seeking marriage licenses, but the gun license applications have picked up tremendously, as you might imagine, close to 4,000. So there are a lot. And so we expect the foot traffic will pick up because we are statutorily mandated to accept gun license applications. And of course, individuals that are doing title searches will continue to visit the clerk's office to do that. But those licensure applicants will only be able to come to the courthouse via appointment, because we've got a plan for them and to have them to be able to safely come to the courthouse. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I know that was important to the public and to some of us on this call, and that is the magistrate court where Chief Judge Beryl Anderson presides. And that is because she handles all of the family violence protective orders in DeKalb County. She and her judges are working diligently. We worked on a virtual process, as I explained before, and so that is up and running and will continue to run. And she is still going to be doing those. But even if you can put a temporary protective order in place, excuse me for just a second, my 5-year-old is singing loudly because she knows I'm talking. I'm dealing with the realities that everyone else is dealing with of having small children at home. And so that has been the situation for me since 7:30 this morning when I got on the first call and presentation. So that's happening in real life. We are having to consider litigants who have children, and the summer camps obviously will maybe reopen in some instances, but are closed in others. And I know y'all know that there are some challenges with that, but we're trying to service people. And then going back to what I was saying about the magistrate court, they are conducting hearings for TPOs, but the 12-month hearings are where the backlog is probably going to occur, because you have to have a lot of safety planning for victims of domestic violence. And we have some of the agencies that help them, like the DeKalb Volunteer Lawyers, the Women's Resource Center, and Tapestry for individuals who do not speak English, to be able to assist with safety planning. And they are doing that work. Another consideration is that in the CARE Act, with evictions, even though the judicial extension would normally allow for evictions, there are going to be a large class of people who would not be subject to eviction, despite the fact that that portion of the judicial emergency has been suspended. And the reason I say that is because there is a provision in the CARE Act that states that landlords cannot evict or initiate an eviction against an individual from a unit where a forbearance has been sought by the owner of that property. And so that's going to cover a whole lot of people who still who have loans on their properties and who are serving as landlords. It provides protections from charging late fees, from filing evictions or seeking evictions under the CARE Act. Additionally, you have to attach an affidavit with your application for dispossessory or eviction if you are a landlord. And many of the filings, as I've been told by Judge Anderson, do not contain that affidavit. And so for that reason, those petitions, which some of which were filed during the emergency period, most of which were filed during the emergency period, will be dismissed because they did not have the affidavit attached. So I wanted to share that information, that there is protection for tenants under the CARE Act, that landlords who are filing evictions who didn't attach affidavits will have their petitions dismissed by virtue of law, and that we are open as a courthouse, but limiting, obviously, the number of matters that are being heard right now to a virtual process. So in other words, there are not to be any in-person hearings until at least June 15th. And obviously no jury trials for the foreseeable future, because there are going to be large numbers of people who would have to be called to the courthouse, and we just don't feel it's safe to do that right now. So the task force is working diligently on building retrofits, making sure that we are able to clearly communicate any of these changes and requirements to the public. We are going to work on a centralized website to update people concerned with court-related matters on COVID issues specifically, so they don't have to, go to a recorder's court, state court traffic division or magistrate court or superior court. You can get it all in one centralized place. And we're working around the clock on those issues just to try to keep people safe, but also to continue to handle matters in court. I myself, even though I am the chief judge, I still conduct virtual hearings every week in the civil and criminal space. And I know many of my colleagues are doing the same. So I appreciate your support and would love feedback from any and everybody who has questions. I will take your questions, but we are just trying to operate in the most efficient way possible, understanding that part of this is going to become the new normal, that is conducting some of these hearings in the virtual space. We are even having virtual mediations through our DeKalb Mediation Center right now. So that's the place that we're in. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief, for the update. I know that our sheriff is on the call. I know we had some technical issues, but I wanted to get Sheriff Melody Maddox on to give us an update from the Sheriff Department in terms of the work we're doing to try to keep our inmates and others safe with the DeKalb County Sheriff Department.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I apologize. Just to let you all know, I actually took a little break today. Can you believe it? And sitting on my patio just to get a breather, 150 days in. But just thank you all. Thank you, Mr. CEO. And I first of all want to thank you all and the commissioners for your help and everything that we've been doing at the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office. And I want to first of all say that we have 1,214 male inmates, 97 females, 3 that are pregnant. And to this date, we have 0 COVID-19 in the jail. And we are really, truly trying to keep it as such. We are continuing our cleaning of the facility on a weekly basis every morning. As I said before, the inmates, as soon as they come in, before entering into the facility, along with their arresting officer, is getting a temperature check. They must have their mask on prior to entering. They are in a 14-day quarantine time where they, sit in the cell before they're actually classified and put into regular population. What else? We are constantly educating the inmates on the, how to prevent and continue to keep this as a flat line. We're still following CDC guidelines with Dr. Ford and the DeKalb Board of Health.
the DeKalb County Sheriff Office, let me just say, has done a phenomenal job, and it has not been done by myself. It's with the help of those men and women that are working at the Sheriff's Office, along with still operating, as Chief Judge Jackson just said, we're still making sure that if there are individuals that must come into the court, that the judges and everybody else that come in is still safe. And we are trying to make sure that once it's fully started, that we limit the amount of movement from those inmates. So we're still asking for virtual court. And it's been really great working with the judges. We've all come together as one. And I still want to make sure that people know that if they have any questions, I'm still getting complaints saying that there's no number out there. And I put it out every time that I speak, that please call 404-298-8282, 404-298-8282. And someone, if not even myself, will reach out to you within 24 hours in regards to any questions or concerns that you may have in regards to your loved one that is in the DeKalb County Jail. So we also want to make sure that we look out for the officers. You know, anxiety is starting to kick in probably on some of them. And we have the EAP in place and Key Pros. So we're constantly letting them know, please do not suffer in silence, that we are in this together. And I always say that together we're going to get through this. So I want to make sure that the officers are taken care of, as well as the inmates. We are trying to, have prepared for this next wave, as has been noted. And with that said, we want to make sure that we have plenty of masks as well as glove and cleaning supplies on hand to continue to do what we're doing. The inmates do have a mask. They are required to put the mask on when they come out of their rooms into their regular quarters, whether they're on the phone or watching television. And we swap those masks out every so many weeks to make sure we get one for one. So when they give us one, they get a clean one back. And those are just some of the things that we are doing, that we will continue to do, and to make sure that everyone is safe as they enter and exit, and make sure that the courthouse and those officials that are there are safe as well. And, you know, I just have to say thank you to, you know, my folks at the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office, but also to the commissioners over there that have been helping out, and also to you, Mr. CEO. So thank you so much. And if there's any questions or anything that I can do, I'm asking any of you all to please reach out to me. Majority of everybody on here should have my number where you can reach out to me specifically and ask me questions, and I will make sure that I take pride in what I do, and I'm loving what I do. Even though it's a pandemic, I'm still handling it, and we're doing a great job.
Thank you, Sheriff. Send me your address. I want to come sit on that back porch a little bit this afternoon. But thank you so much. And we have about 15 minutes left. I want to be conscious of the time. I saw Ms. Leanna Levitan raise her hand. Okay. Madam CEO.
First of all, I'd like to really commend you for your vision, your insight. And as you stated, this is not a short-term proposition that we're faced with. And I'm very, very impressed with the team that you have. Everything is teamwork. And I want to thank you. As you know, I still remain on the Atlanta Regional Commission. And I did note money is coming your way for the senior program. I'm so impressed with this presentation that I really would like the opportunity to share it with Atlanta Regional Commission so that people in the 10-county area, and maybe even the state of Georgia, can see what DeKalb County is doing, if that would be at all possible. Also, I want to thank the staff again, but your vision in this is so impressive. And I do want to say thank you. And I would like to again stress that we need to maybe go back to ARC and see if they can fill some of that gap that you have for the senior programs. If there's anything that I can do, I'm not bashful to ask, you know that. But I'm just very, very impressed with what I've heard today and the presentations that have been made by all facets of county government. And it makes me feel really good that I'm in that over 65 category, that I understand the importance of what you are doing so that you can cut down on the number of people that get this virus, because I do think this is not going to be something that's going to end next week or next month. And your preparation and your vision and also your experience. And as I said, I'm very, very impressed with the staff that you have and the follow-up. And I'm very proud to still be around, living and enjoying DeKalb County.
Well, thank you for laying the foundation, Madam CEO, and we appreciate you, and I'll follow up personally regarding any additional support we can get from the ARC for seniors. And thank you for your leadership and your service. Ms. Jeannie Lynn, did I see your hand, Ms. Lynn?
No, sir. This is all really helpful and interesting.
Well, thank you. Say hello to the judge for me. And in concluding, I wanted to give our newest task force members a chance. Mr. Jim Redovian, any thoughts you might have based on your just your oversight from where you sit?
Well, I was, like I say, I wanted to sit today and just kind of listen to see what's going on. And I am very impressed also by the people on this committee, and I'm proud to be part of it. And I look forward to what we do in the future. A lot of work has already begun. There's a lot of things on its way. I give credit to everybody that's been involved in that beginning. And I think that DeKalb will be a star when this is all over and they look back on this and say that we had a good jump start, that you had your people under control going in the directions they needed to go. And I think that we are, as citizens of 42 years now, I've been around a long time.
You muted yourself, sir.
I don't know how I did that, but I did, didn't I? But anyway, I think DeKalb is going to be, the people at DeKalb are going to be very proud of their government all the way through. I know we don't always get along, and we do have our times when things are a little rough and they go in different directions, but when it gets serious and it has to be done, it gets done. And that is a very important thing. So I am very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank all of you all for your support and for your ongoing encouragement. I had this nightmare. It's a dream, and literally in a foot race of death. And I seem to get out front, and I can see a finish line, but the finish line always recedes back into the distance. So literally, we are in a foot race with death. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that he does not win. I'll allow CEO Lee May to conclude with a few words and hopefully a word of faith and prayer. CEO May.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And let me just continue the words of compliment of you, Mr. CEO. This is an amazing group. I'm looking through the whole panoramic of the people on this task force, and it is a phenomenal group, and the county should be pleased to know that you are being forthright in terms of your vision for the county and moving forward. Thank you for placing me on this task force as well. I wanted to introduce you all to Lumberjack Lee. I look a lot different now with thanks to COVID-19. Didn't know I could grow a beard like this. And
you and Lumberjack Steve.
With Lumberjack Steve, Lumberjack Jeff. I see Jeff over there as well. So yeah, I'm just excited to be a part of this as well. Great information always from those who have been presenting as well. And I won't go through what everyone has discussed, but I'm really thankful that you all are looking at various aspects of how this pandemic will affect different areas of the county and different people as well, and you being very proactive regarding that. I would say this, one thing that as we're communicating, because of my newfound role for the last 3 years or so, being a part of the faith community and leading a church here, I'm also seeing kind of the effects of people of faith, regardless of your faith background. And one thing that I'm really concerned about during this season is the anxiousness the passion for communities of faith to come back together to worship in person. And it's something that kind of it kind of keeps me up a little bit at night. What we have done at our church is I've pulled together a small team of some corporate executives from Chick-fil-A, from Coca-Cola, some entrepreneurs that we have that still really interact with the public a lot. Our superintendent, we have some key people in the school system as well that's helping on our team, and we are crafting our own reentry plan right now. Now, let me start off by saying we have no desire to come back to in-person worship anytime soon. As a matter of fact, our first date that we would even consider would be when the school system decides to come back in person to align kind of with families and their normal routine of things. So we're considering what that looks like now. We just sent a survey out to our membership as well. And what I realize is in the faith community, we are looking to our federal, state, and local leaders for direction. And as someone mentioned in here, there's a lot of different messaging that is going on. And it's kind of what the world is saying is we need to start doing this, right? But the faith community, as a part of its mission, is accustomed to doing this. And that doesn't bode well for a pandemic. And so any guidance and wisdom that we can begin to think of as a part of this body to be able to share with the overall faith community, I think would be awesome for them, because I was on and I'll kind of end with this, I was on a conference call with the governor, and Sandy's boss was on there as well. And she made a statement that a lot, and this is when the shutdown was just beginning, but she made a statement that a lot of the new cases were coming as a result of faith communities gathering, some of the hot spots around. And so as churches are starting to do this again, that may be a part of a second wave, and so I think if we can be thoughtful about what kind of resources we can put in place, what kind of training, what kind of support in terms of needs that would be available for the faith community, I think would be great. So let me end on this. In my faith perspective, it says, where there is no vision, the people will perish. And then there's another scripture that says in Habakkuk 2:2, it says, to write the vision and make it plain. Mr. CEO and everyone that's on here, it's clear that you have vision. And as a result of this work that you're doing, you're writing it down and you're making it plain. And I think if we continue to run the course and run these plays, that you'll see the people of DeKalb will bode well. The businesses of DeKalb and all the key stakeholders will be better off as a result. So thank you for your work you're doing. Thank you for inviting me in to be a part of this as well. And I'm here to support you any way that you need. Thank you again.
Thank you, Reverend CEO Lee May. Everyone be safe and be blessed. Thank you.